My name is Wendy Sheridan. I'm 30 years old, and somehow my own mother decided my wedding was the perfect stage for my sister instead of me. 3 weeks before the biggest day of my life, I stood alone in my kitchen, scrolling through Facebook when I saw it. My mom had posted a photo of my sister wearing a floor-length ivory gown, smiling like a bride with the caption, "My beautiful girl is going to steal the show." There were 12 photos of fancy boutique, champagne glasses sitting on the counter behind them like it was some kind of celebration. My mom once told me my marriage wouldn't last, and yet she took my sister dress shopping 3 separate times for her wedding, turning each trip into a full production. But when it came to me, she said, "Just wear something simple." What she didn't realize was that my maid of honor had already been planning something behind the scenes for 2 months. So when my mother showed up at my wedding venue in her almost white masterpiece, security was already waiting. But before I get to that moment, let me take you back because this story didn't start there. It started 3 years ago, the day my sister got engaged. My sister Paige is 3 years older than me, and when she got engaged to her husband Colton, my mother treated it like a royal event. The dress shopping alone happened 3 times. The first trip was just the 2 of them, brunch at a bistro downtown followed by a private appointment at a boutique in Nashville. Of course, my mom posted everything online, 17 photos, a bottle of Veuve Clicquot, and a caption calling Paige her perfect girl. The second trip, I was invited. I drove 40 minutes to meet them, only to walk in and see Paige already wearing a fitted gown, spinning in front of my mom while the consultant adjusted the hem. I tried to compliment her, told her the neckline looked beautiful, but my mom shut me down instantly, saying I didn't understand my sister's style. So I sat there quietly for 2 hours, holding Paige's purse and forcing a smile for one single photo. The third trip? I wasn't invited at all. I found out through another Facebook album. Professional photos, soft lighting, Paige holding flowers while my mom wiped fake tears with a monogrammed handkerchief. Everyone in the family commented. No one noticed I wasn't there. That time, I wasn't even engaged yet. I had been dating Luke for about a year, but no one asked me about him during Thanksgiving. Instead, my mom kept asking Paige about her wedding registry, and then turned to me like I was an afterthought and asked if I was still doing that therapy thing with those kids. I'm a pediatric occupational therapist, and I had been doing that job for 6 years. But to her, it was just that thing. I didn't realize back then that those 3 shopping trips were only a preview of how she would treat my wedding. Luke proposed to me in the simplest way possible, on our front porch while grilling steaks, the ring sitting in a small wooden box next to my glass of sweet tea. He barely got the words out before I said yes. I cried, he laughed, and the steaks burned. That's who Luke is, quiet, steady, someone who shows love through actions instead of attention. That same evening, I called my mom to tell her the news. She answered on the 3rd ring, and when I said yes, there was silence, 4 full seconds of it. Then she said, "I hope he knows what he's getting into." No congratulations, no excitement, not even curiosity about the ring. Just that. Like I was a problem someone had agreed to take on. I tried to ignore it, told myself she was just surprised that she would come around eventually. Luke heard everything since I had her on speaker, and later that night, he told me I didn't need her permission to be happy. I wanted to believe that fully, but part of me still hoped she would show up for me. 2 weeks later, I asked her to come dress shopping with me. She said she was busy helping Paige. I asked again the next week, and that's when she sent a message I will never forget. She told me to wear something simple because my marriage wouldn't last and I would regret wasting money on a dress. I saved that message, not out of anger, but because I needed proof that I wasn't imagining it. So I went shopping without her with my best friend Megan and a couple of coworkers. No champagne, no cameras, just us in a simple bridal shop off the highway. When I tried on the 4th dress, something inside me shifted. It wasn't flashy, but it felt right. Megan immediately said it was the one, and I cried quietly in the fitting room while the consultant handed me tissues without saying a word. I paid for that dress myself, thinking that was the worst my mother could do. I was wrong. Within weeks, she started telling the family a completely different story. According to her, I was the one shutting her out, the ungrateful daughter who didn't even invite her. My aunt messaged me saying my mom was crying every night, asking why I couldn't include her. Another relative called with the same story. Every version made me look like the problem. When I tried to explain, no one listened because they had already heard her side first. That's when I realized if I stayed silent, her version would become the truth for everyone. Then it got worse. She told my grandmother I was only marrying Luke for money, which made no sense at all. That lie wasn't just hurtful, it was intentional. It was meant to damage how people saw me. That night, Luke and I sat at the kitchen table, untouched food in front of us, and he told me I had a choice. I could let her ruin the wedding, or I could protect it. And for the first time, I really understood what was at stake. Not just my wedding day, but how I would be seen for years to come. So I looked at him, and I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. "You'd really be okay with me finally doing something about this?" I asked, still unsure if I was allowed to draw a line. "Wendy, she told your grandmother you were only marrying me for money, and I drive a truck with duct tape on the mirror," Luke said calmly. "I think we're way past trying to keep the peace." I almost laughed at that, almost. 9:15 that night, I called Megan, and she answered before the second ring like she had been waiting for something to go wrong. She always does that, like chaos is her specialty, which honestly it is. She runs events for a hotel chain in Nashville, and planning is basically how she shows love. I told her I needed help, but first I had to ask if I was overreacting or being dramatic. She didn't hesitate for even a second. "Babe, you gave that woman almost 30 years of chances, and now you're asking for one single day." I let out a breath I didn't even realize I'd been holding for weeks. I told her I wasn't going to remove my mom from the guest list because I didn't want to be seen as the daughter who banned her own mother, but I needed to be ready for whatever she might do. Megan immediately agreed and said not to ban her, just to be prepared. I heard papers shifting on her end like she was already moving into action mode. She told me to give her 2 months. I asked her what for, and she just said to trust her because this is what she does, even if it's usually corporate events falling apart instead of families. That made me laugh for real, the first genuine laugh I'd had in weeks. The time, I had no idea what she was planning, but 2 months later I would find out. I'm going to pause for just a moment because if you've ever been stuck between keeping peace in your family and protecting your own dignity, then you already understand how heavy that choice is. No one should have to make it, but so many of us do. If this story feels personal to you, just comment one day so I know you're here, and if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss what happens next, because even now I still struggle to believe what my mother did after this. 6 weeks before the wedding, I drove to my mom's house without calling first because I needed to face her directly. She was sitting at the kitchen table with Paige, tea and lemon cake between them, flipping through a home decor catalog like it was any normal day. I told her I needed to talk about the wedding, and she barely looked up before asking what the issue was this time. I told her I wanted her there but needed her to support me instead of competing with me. That got her attention. She looked up and repeated the word compete like it was absurd, then insisted everything she does is for the family. So I asked her why she told everyone I didn't invite her dress shopping when I had invited her twice and she refused both times. She didn't answer me directly. Instead, she turned to Paige slowly and asked if she could see what she has to deal with. Paige just stared at the table in silence. I waited, hoping for some kind of acknowledgement or even a small apology, but instead my mom's eyes filled with tears and she accused me of turning everyone against her, even bringing up my father and saying he would be ashamed. My dad passed away 6 years ago, and in that moment she used him like a weapon. I stood up, the chair scraping loudly against the floor, and realized I already had my answer. I said goodbye and walked out without waiting for anything else. I sat in my car a few blocks away for 11 minutes, engine still running, knowing that for the first time in my life I had walked away from her mid-conversation, and deep down I knew it wouldn't be the last time. 10 days later, my phone rang early in the morning, and it was Megan telling me to check my mom's Facebook immediately. I opened it half awake, but the moment I saw the post, I felt like all the air left my body. There were 12 photos of my sister standing in a high-end bridal boutique, wearing a full-length ivory gown with lace, beading, and a long train. This wasn't just a nice dress for a wedding guest, this was a bridal gown, no question about it. Caption said my sister was going to steal the show, and the comments made it worse, with family members calling her more beautiful than the bride while my mom liked every single one. I even zoomed in and saw the price tag still attached in one of the photos, $6,500. Luke came out of the bathroom and immediately knew something was wrong when he saw my face. I showed him the post, and after a few seconds, he just said okay in a tone that told me everything had shifted. I called Megan right away and told her to start the plan. Later that day, I called Paige because I needed to give her a chance, not for her but for myself, so I could say I tried. When I asked her about the dress, she tried to downplay it by saying it wasn't completely white, just ivory, and that our mom had chosen it. I pointed out the obvious, that it was clearly a bridal gown with a train, and asked her directly not to wear it. She hesitated and said our mom had already told everyone, and changing now would upset her. I told her that if she wore it, it would hurt me, and asked her who actually mattered in that moment. She said it wasn't fair, and I agreed because it wasn't. After a long silence, I made it clear I wasn't asking her to choose sides, just not to wear a wedding dress to my wedding. She didn't respond, and I eventually hung up. She never called back, and I understood that her silence was the answer. She had always been my mom's favorite, and one conversation wasn't going to change that. I told Megan what happened, and she replied almost instantly that she already knew and that everything was ready. We met at a coffee shop near the venue, and Megan walked in holding a thick binder labeled Operation Ivory Shield. I couldn't help but laugh seeing that, even after everything. She opened it and showed me a full plan, including the venue layout, timeline, contacts, and even a printed photo of my mom. She explained that the venue had a dress code enforcement policy and that staff could handle situations like this discreetly if requested. She had already spoken to the coordinator, who confirmed they deal with similar situations every season. Plan was simple but effective. A backup dress in navy would be ready at the entrance, and if my mom or sister showed up in anything close to white, staff would stop them, explain the policy, and offer them a chance to change. If they refused, they wouldn't be allowed in. I asked Megan if I was taking things too far, and she shut that down immediately, reminding me that the real line had already been crossed long ago. Then she flipped to another page and showed me a backup plan in case my mom tried something different at the last minute. I looked at her and realized she had thought of everything, and for the first time since this all started, I actually felt ready. 3 weeks before the wedding, my phone rang at exactly 8 in the morning, and the name on the screen made my stomach tighten. It was Grandma Ruth. She's 82, and she only calls about once a month, always on a Sunday, always to ask if I'm eating properly, so a weekday call meant something was wrong. When I answered, she told me she had seen the photos my mom posted of the dress she bought for Paige, and I don't know why, but I slid down onto the kitchen floor as she spoke, like it was the only place that felt steady enough to hear what she was about to say. Then she said something no one in my family had ever said to me before. She told me she sees it, that she has always seen it. My throat closed up because in 30 years, not one person had ever acknowledged the way my mother treated me. People told me to be patient, to be understanding, to keep the peace, but no one ever said they saw it. She told me to let her finish, that my mother is her daughter and she loves her, but love doesn't mean she's blind. Her voice was careful, measured, like someone who has spent a lifetime choosing her words. She said my mother was just like her own mother had been, always favoring one child while the other stayed quiet, and she admitted she spent her whole life not speaking up because that's what women were taught to do. Then she told me not to make the same mistake, not to stay silent like she did. I cried quietly while she spoke, tears falling onto the cold kitchen tile, and when I finally found my voice, I asked her if she would sit with me at the wedding, not in the family row but next to me before I walked down the aisle. She said she would like that very much. After I hung up, I stayed on that floor for another 10 minutes, feeling like something inside me had shifted for the first time in years. The rehearsal dinner was the night before the wedding at a small Italian restaurant near the venue, about 30 people seated at long tables under soft string lights. My mom arrived 20 minutes late, walking in slowly like she expected every head to turn, wearing an all-white suit instead of the ivory gown she had clearly saved for the next day. felt like a preview of what was coming. Luke's mom noticed immediately but didn't say a word, just raised an eyebrow. For the first hour, everything stayed calm, almost normal, until someone handed my mom a microphone for a toast. She stood up, smiled, and said she hoped this marriage would work out for me because I deserved a win after everything I had been through. The way she said it made it sound like my life had been a series of failures and this wedding was some kind of consolation prize. Then she turned to Paige and complimented her appearance, and the room went quiet in that uncomfortable way where people don't know where to look. Under the table, Luke squeezed my hand once, and across from me, Megan discreetly recorded everything on her phone, not to cause a scene, but to make sure the truth couldn't be rewritten later. Through dinner, I was walking to my car when my mom stopped me in the parking lot under a single lamp, the night warm and heavy around us. She confronted me about asking Paige to change her dress and warned me that if I embarrassed her the next day, she would make sure everyone in the family knew who I really was. When I asked her what that meant, she called me ungrateful, a word she had used before because it always carried the weight of obligation, like my entire existence was something I owed her for. I held her gaze and told her she had already decided what kind of mother she was going to be the next day. Then I turned and left without looking back. A few minutes later, I called Megan and told her it was confirmed, and she calmly said everything was already in motion. The next morning, the bridal suite at the Vineyard smelled like hairspray and coffee as Megan worked on my hair while giving me updates. Plan was fully in place, with staff at the entrance, photos ready, and a backup dress waiting if needed. When I finally put on my dress, the one I chose and paid for myself, I looked in the mirror and felt something settle inside me. It wasn't excitement, it was something stronger, like certainty. This day belonged to me. Then Megan showed me my mom's latest post, a selfie with Paige, both of them dressed in ivory, already presenting themselves like they were the stars of the event. I just nodded and said okay because at that point there was nothing left to question. The ceremony was set for 4 o'clock, and my mom arrived early, which she never does, clearly wanting to make an entrance. I stayed in the bridal suite while Megan positioned herself near the entrance and texted me everything as it happened. My mom stepped out of her car wearing that expensive ivory gown, the train brushing against the ground, while Paige followed behind in another light-colored dress that still looked far too close to a bridal outfit. People noticed immediately, whispers spreading as they walked forward, and my mom soaked in every second of attention like it was exactly what she had been waiting for. She made it just past the entrance before 2 staff members approached her calmly and explained that her attire didn't meet the dress code set by the couple, directing her toward a side area to resolve the issue quietly. And in that moment, everything she had planned for weeks started to unravel. Beverly's smile froze the moment she was stopped, her expression shifting from confidence to disbelief as she demanded to know what was going on and reminded them that she was the mother of the bride. The staff member remained calm and respectful, explaining that the bride had requested a strict dress code for all guests and that it applied to everyone equally. She grew louder, asking where I was, insisting this was ridiculous, but they simply told her I was preparing for the ceremony and offered her a choice: change into the dress they had prepared or leave. Her eyes scanned the area, searching for someone to step in and defend her, but no one moved. No one rushed over. Her posture stiffened, chin raised, as if she could still control the moment through sheer force of will. Then the venue coordinator stepped in, composed and unshaken, making it clear that those were the only options available. Beverly's voice sharpened, accusing them of trying to keep a mother out of her own daughter's wedding, but the response didn't change. Choice was still hers. Guests had started watching from a distance, not close enough to interfere, but close enough to understand exactly what was happening. Familiar faces stood there, observing quietly, and for the first time there was no one stepping in to reinforce her version of reality. After a long pause, she turned and walked away toward the parking lot, her dress dragging across the gravel as the moment she had planned began to unravel. Paige remained at the entrance, frozen, caught between following her mother or making a different decision. When she was offered the backup dress, she hesitated for a few seconds that felt like they carried the weight of years. Then she accepted it and asked where she could change. In that small choice, something shifted. It was the first time she didn't follow my mom. My mom stayed in her car throughout the ceremony, watching from a distance while inside everything moved forward exactly as it was meant to. When Megan came into the bridal suite and told me it was handled, I felt something lift off me, something I hadn't even realized I was carrying for so long. When I walked down the aisle, I wasn't focused on what was missing, only on what was there. My grandmother sat in the front row, emotional and proud, and Luke stood waiting for me with that quiet steadiness that had carried me through all of this. The ceremony was simple, honest, and completely ours. When we said our vows, there was no tension left in me, no waiting for something to go wrong. For the first time, I felt fully present. The reception that followed was everything I had hoped for. It was warm, relaxed, filled with laughter that didn't feel forced or guarded. People danced, talked, and celebrated without the shadow that had hung over everything before. Megan's speech captured years of friendship and growth without ever needing to mention what had happened. Paige stayed, changed into the navy dress, quiet but present, and as the evening went on, it became clear she had chosen, even if she didn't say it out loud. My mom tried to reach people that night, but most ignored it, choosing instead to stay in the moment that was actually unfolding in front of them. The next day, she started calling everyone, telling her version of the story, but this time it didn't land the same way. Too many people had seen what really happened. Too many had watched her refuse a simple request and walk away on her own. One by one, people pushed back, gently but firmly, and her narrative started to fall apart. Didn't collapse all at once, but it cracked in ways it never had before. For the first time, her version wasn't the only version. In the weeks that followed, the ripple effects became clear. Some family members stepped back from her, others started questioning things they had accepted for years, and a few even reached out to me with apologies they should have made long ago. My grandmother had her own conversation with her, one that had been decades overdue, and finally said the things she had kept buried for most of her life. Didn't fix everything, but it changed something fundamental. For me, the biggest change wasn't in how others saw my mom, it was in how I saw myself. I didn't feel like I needed to prove anything anymore. I had protected my wedding, my peace, and my life moving forward. And for the first time, I understood that setting boundaries doesn't break a family, it reveals what was already broken and gives you the choice to stop carrying it. We didn't make waves. That's what she said, like it was a rule that had been passed down instead of a choice. Then she paused, took a breath, and said she was done living like that. My mom didn't take it well. She got angry, accused her of being manipulated, said I had turned everyone against her, cycling through the same patterns she always used: tears, guilt, deflection, blame shifting from one person to the next. My grandmother let her finish without interrupting, and when the silence finally came, she told her she loved her, but right now she liked me more, and that should mean something. When she told me about that conversation later, sitting in her living room with her hands trembling slightly, I cried, not because I was sad, but because something inside me finally loosened after being tight for so many years. Felt like a door I had been pushing against my entire life suddenly opening, only to realize it had never been locked. She apologized for waiting so long to say it, and I told her what mattered was that she said it now. About a month after the wedding, Paige texted me asking to meet for coffee, just the two of us. I almost said no. Luke reminded me I didn't owe her anything, and Megan offered to sit nearby just in case, which she ended up doing anyway. Cafe was quiet, neutral, the kind of place where nothing important is supposed to happen, but everything did. Paige was already there when I arrived, sitting by the window, stirring a drink she wasn't even drinking. We sat in silence for what felt like forever before she admitted she should have refused the dress. I told her yes, and she said she didn't know how to say no. I told her I understood. She said our mom called her over and over after leaving the wedding, telling her everything had been ruined. When I asked what she thought, she hesitated before saying that our mom had ruined her own day and almost mine too. I didn't rush to respond, just let her hear her own words. Then she admitted our mom wanted her to post online criticizing me, and for the first time in her life, she said no. I looked at her and realized she was just now learning something most people figure out years earlier. I told her it was a start. We didn't hug or pretend everything was fixed, but the silence between us felt different, not comfortable but honest, and that was new for us. 3 months later, my mom sent a long message filled with half apologies and excuses, the kind that say sorry without actually taking responsibility. I didn't respond to it. Instead, I wrote her a letter, one that took multiple drafts to get right. In the end, I told her I loved her but made it clear that I would never again let anyone, including her, make me feel like I didn't deserve happiness. I told her that if she wanted to be part of my life moving forward, it had to start with honesty, not just about the wedding but about everything that came before it. I mailed it and waited. For 2 weeks, there was nothing, and for once, I didn't chase after a response. Then she called and asked to meet. I agreed, but on my terms, choosing the place myself. When we met, she showed up on time wearing navy instead of white, and even though neither of us mentioned it, I noticed. Now, months later, I'm sitting in the home Luke and I built together, looking at a wedding photo where I'm laughing, where everything feels real and unforced. My grandmother is there in the front row, emotional and proud, and there's an empty chair that I chose not to crop out because it tells part of the truth. I didn't share this story so anyone would hate my mom because she's still my mother, complicated and flawed. I shared it because for so long I believed loving your family meant enduring everything, staying quiet, hoping that if you just gave enough, things would change. Letting go of that belief was harder than anything else I've done, but it was necessary. What I've learned is that boundaries aren't about shutting people out completely, they're about choosing how and when people are allowed into your life. My relationship with my mom isn't perfect, and it may never be, but for the first time, it's honest. She knows I won't bend just to keep the peace, and I know I don't need permission to protect my own happiness. The dress she bought still exists, hanging in her closet, a reminder of everything that happened and everything that changed. If you've ever been in a place where you had to choose between keeping peace and protecting yourself, just know that choosing yourself doesn't make you wrong. Sometimes it's the only way forward. That's my story, and maybe in some way it's yours too. If it is, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is right now. I read every comment. And if you want more stories like this, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.